So, there's this question that seemingly came out of nowhere to completely take over the internet. And what's so fascinating is that, in doing so, it actually revealed something pretty incredible about how we see the past. Okay, so here's the question. How often do you think about the Roman Empire? Seriously, take a second. Is it once a month? Once a year? Maybe never. Well, it turns out the answer to this seemingly random question has become a massive social media trend.
And it all kicked off with this super simple idea that just caught fire online. The basic premise? That men, for some reason, think about ancient Rome a lot.
And saying it went viral is honestly an understatement. On TikTok alone, videos using the hashtag Roman Empire have racked up more than 1.2 billion views. Yeah, that's billion with a B. This isn't some niche corner of the internet. This is a full-blown cultural moment.
The trend itself was pretty simple. Women would just start filming and ask the men in their lives this one question. And the answers were, well, they were surprisingly frequent. You had guys saying anything from a few times a month all the way to every single day.
Okay, so it's a funny meme, we get it, but is there actually any truth to it? Is this just one of those internet things that gets completely blown out of proportion, or does it point to a real pattern?
We've all seen the viral videos, but what happens when you ask a much larger, more scientific group of people? Well, the polling firm YouGov decided to do exactly that. And the results are pretty clear. As you can see from this data, the poll found that, men are significantly more likely than women to think about the Roman Empire. Just look at the bars. Whether we're talking daily, weekly, or monthly, men reported thinking about it more often, across the board. But here's where it gets really interesting. Let's flip it around. A full 53% of women, that's more than half, say they never think about it. For men, that number is only 30%. That's a huge gap. And that right there is the statistical kernel of truth at the heart of this whole meme. So here's the bottom line. Is it a big exaggeration to say all men think about the Roman Empire every day? Of course. But the meme is absolutely tapping into a genuine, measurable difference in how people think. Which, naturally, leads us to the next big question. Why?
Why the Roman Empire specifically? Out of all of history, what is it about this one period that seems to capture the male imagination so much? Well, experts think it might tap into some really deep-seated ideas about modern masculinity.
Psychologists point to a few key things. For one, Rome is this giant symbol of glorified male strength and ambition. In a time when masculinity is being re-examined, some men might gravitate toward a society that, in their minds, really celebrated it. It also represents a world of clear structure and order, a kind of systems-based thinking. And finally, there's the idea of legacy. The Roman Empire is long gone, but we're still talking about it.
As psychologist Ronald Levant puts it, this whole trend isn't really about aqueducts and legions. It reflects a much deeper conversation that a lot of men are having, which is, what is a man and what should a man be?
But this brings us to a really critical point. The Rome that everybody's thinking about, is it the real Rome, or is it a version that's been filtered through decades of Hollywood movies?
Let's be honest. As one opinion piece put it, people are reminiscing about the movie Gladiator. They aren't fantasizing about the complexities of Roman tax policy. No, they're picturing themselves as Maximus, the powerful general who defied an emperor. It's a fantasy of heroism, power, and having a real impact.
And this is where that fantasy just completely collides with historical reality. The fantasy is becoming a war hero. The reality, during the imperial period, about 1 in every 4 people in Roman Italy was enslaved. The fantasy is living in some lavish villa. The reality, you were statistically far more likely to be a poor farmer just living a life of brutal, hard labor.
And the reality gets even grimmer. Historians will tell you that for the vast majority of people, life was defined by poverty and violence. A huge number of children died in infancy. Slavery wasn't just common, it was everywhere, and it was unimaginably brutal. And hey, if you were lucky enough to even survive childhood, your life expectancy was still only in the 40s.
As historian Dr. Daniel Schwartz from Texas A&M puts it very bluntly, Rome was a pretty nasty place for most people. That simple sentence just cuts right through that romanticized pop culture version that so many of us have in our heads.
So, if the popular image of Rome is so disconnected from what it was really like, what does this trend actually tell us about ourselves, right here, in the 21st century? It suggests that this isn't really just a love of history, it's a kind of nostalgia, a longing for a simplified, idealized past. It's a fascination with a fantasy of power and glory and having a clear-cut purpose that for pretty much everyone alive back then just wasn't real.
And this quote just gets right to the heart of it. It's a totally natural human thing. When we look back at history, we all imagine ourselves as the Caesar, the general, the senator. We all want to believe we would have been the conqueror, not one of the millions who were conquered, enslaved, or just forgotten.
And that leaves us with a final, really crucial thought. This whole trend, which started as a lighthearted meme, is actually a kind of mirror. The fascination isn't really with what Rome was, but with what we wish our own world could be, a place with a perceived sense of strength, a clear purpose, and a lasting legacy. So the real question becomes, what does our need to cling to this romanticized, powerful version of the past say about our own anxieties in the present? Now that's really something to think about.